Hi, and welcome back to the online study of preparing for PPA certification. We're now on section C of image capture and output, which is the final section of the entire study. So if you've made it this far, congratulations. Section C says, output or print image to desired medium. Now there's 4 items on the exam from this section, but there's 6 items listed under this section, so a couple of them won't even be addressed on the exam, but we're going to learn all 6 of them, and hopefully if those questions come up, we'll get them all right. Number 1 says, knowledge of file sizes relative to final output. I would like to think that this section is somewhat of a review, as we've already spent so much time talking about file sizes and how file size relates to resolution and image quality. So let's just take a look at a few scenarios where we'll make some generalizations about the file sizes. Images used online and through email require a minimum file size to display properly and efficiently. Resolutions are set by height and width in pixels. With today's digital displays and large screens, larger file sizes may be required to present higher quality images on these larger devices. Inkjet printing. These image files will need to be somewhat larger than images prepared for online use. The larger the file size, the better the resolution, to a point. Inkjet printers actually print at a higher resolution than the file itself. This is because inkjets can spray hundreds of tiny little droplets in an inch of space. For photographic printing, most photo labs now use printers which use laser technology to expose photographic paper, which is then processed in traditional photographic chemistry. These printers produce images with very high resolution. Now you should contact your lab and let them tell you what the best resolution is for printing on their equipment. Generally, it's probably going to be around 240 to 250 PPI. But one of the things that you may not realize, when you order really large images from your lab, that resolution isn't going to be enough. But the lab uses a software to res up the file size digitally. The process is called interpolation. The software dramatically increases the file size before the image is actually printed. It adds pixels and estimates their tonal values based on the surrounding pixels. Because this interpolation process is so efficient, most labs are just fine with you submitting images that are around 240 PPI. The reason is the smaller file size upload more quickly and require less time to deal with on the lab's end. The interpolation process handles any additional resolution that you might need to get your images printed at their best. For images for publication, or the images that will be printed on a 4-color press, generally speaking, the image requirement is 300 PPI or larger. Again, contact the person who's doing the printing and they will tell you which resolution they prefer. Number 2 says, knowledge of the necessary instructions to provide to the lab, including the use of cropping guides, monochrome versus color preference, etc. For me, this section is all about building a relationship with your lab. It's really important that your lab knows what you expect of them, just like you should know what to expect from your lab. It begins with specifics such as writing clear instructions when you're placing an order for particular images. If you're doing some specific cropping to an image and you expect the lab to do that, provide sample prints or guide prints that show the crops that you wish to use. Finally, if you build a relationship with your lab, they'll come to know your preferences for things such as how dark or how light you like to have your images printed, or how warm or how cool you like to have your images printed. It's all based on having a really good relationship with your lab so that they know you and you know them. Number 3 says, knowledge of the different output devices relative to the reproduction requirements, including scanning, printer, web, and printing process. The end use of your photograph should be considered when you're preparing your images for delivery. That image could be used as a digital image in a digital display. It could be a 4-color press image. It could be a photograph that's going to hang on a wall. It could be an inkjet or a dye sub image. It's important to know the various output devices so that you know how to best prepare that file. Most of today's professional photo labs use a continuous tone process. A light jet laser printer exposes traditional emulsion-based photographic papers that must be processed in traditional photographic color chemistry. The paper is exposed to 3 laser lights of red, green, and blue, which combine to create the color spectrum of the photographic image. Once exposed, it is then soaked through the chemical process and then dried. With dye sublimation printers, they also provide a continuous tone process, but they do so by creating individual layers of cyan, magenta, and yellow dye onto the paper with a thermal print head to transfer each dye layer from a ribbon onto the paper. Several processes create their images through the use of dots. Inkjet printers create images by spraying various amounts of inks, pigments, or dyes onto the paper. A 4-color printing process creates images onto paper using tiny dots of various colors created from cyan, magenta, yellow, and black inks. Digital presentations are images that are destined for use on the web or computer monitors. This will include images for websites, email, screensavers, digital displays, and presentations such as PowerPoint. They could also include commercial presentations in venues such as airports and shopping malls. The 2 primary parameters you will need to meet at the time of delivery are the requirements for the color space of the image and the resolution requirements of the image. Number 4 says, knowledge of different delivery methods, including CD, DVD, paper, FTP, and Internet. The delivery of images in today's photographic market include a range of options from paper prints to digital delivery. Choices in this area are based upon client preferences and the photographer's convenience. Delivery on CD is ideal for a limited number of digital files. Its relatively low storage capacity does not make this choice practical for delivery of large files in large numbers. Because their capacity is around 4.5 times greater than that of a CD, DVD delivery offers a low-cost solution for delivery of digital files to a client. Now, delivery on CD and DVDs may be on their way out, as more and more we're seeing computers that don't even have CD or DVD drives. Delivery of images via FTP and other online solutions is really becoming the norm. FTP solutions allow the photographer to deliver images directly to a client through the internet. There are also other paid services that allow you to upload images and then share them with clients. While perhaps well suited for the delivery of small images quickly, email is not a viable solution for the delivery of large quantities of large image files. When delivering photographs, finished images may be delivered on a wide range of photographic papers, canvas, and even metals. Watercolor papers absorb ink, making the colors more subdued, where glossy papers provide the widest tonal range and the highest resolution. Matte papers create a dull finish, while luster papers provide vibrant color and tones without the glare problems of a glossy paper. Number 5 says, knowledge of resolution required for output, including inkjet, photolab, dye sublimation printers, and the web, etc. Because images are printed by a number of different processes, a general understanding of the resolution required for output is in order. Again, I find this to be something of a review, but let's just get down to the brass taxes. Web images are sized by the pixel count for height and pixel width. In terms of output, you could say that they're normally displayed at 72 pixels per inch. Inkjet printing ranges between 200 and 250 pixels per inch for most printers, although I've seen excellent images done at 150 pixels per inch. For the photographic printing processes, generally 200 to 300 pixels per inch is required before interpolation. For 4-color or press printing, these services usually require 300 pixels per inch and larger. When it comes to the archival care of images and prints, the foremost authority may very well be the Wilhelm Imaging Research Group. For our purposes, we're going to take a look at some of the generalities of longevity and the conservation of our images and prints. When it comes to the protection of printed images, the longevity of these images is dependent on many factors in the manufacturing process, including paper selection, acidity of the paper and mounting materials, ink types, exposure to photographic chemistry, and washing in the printing process. The general approaches to improve longevity include minimizing long exposure to the chemical processing of your prints, thorough washing after exposure to chemical processing, using coated papers for inkjet printing, the use of printing inks that use pigments instead of dyes, and printing on archival papers that are acid-free. Once the image is printed, there are a number of environmental factors that we have to be aware of to increase the longevity of our printed images. General approaches to improve longevity of an image after printing include minimizing exposure to light, particularly sunlight and fluorescent lighting, minimizing exposure to humidity, 40% or less is recommended, minimizing exposure to heat, minimizing exposure to airborne pollutants, the use of storage boxes and presentation mats which are acid-free, storage of images in polyethylene, polyester, or polypropylene sleeves. Long-term storage of our images is at its best when the images are stored in cold storage and at low humidity. For the protection of digital files, long-term storage and preservation of image files includes consideration of the media used to store the files in the first place. As we discovered in a previous study, redundancy is the best practice for storing our valuable digital files. Because of the low cost of digital storage, photographers should utilize a workflow that includes the creation of duplicate files that are stored on 2 or more media types and stored at 2 or more locations. External hard drives in a RAID array provide an excellent way of storing files. That's because the RAID array has multiple drives which mirror each other so that in the event one of them fails, you have a duplicate drive as a backup. The use of a RAID array along with DVD storage or cloud storage provides additional protection in the event of drive failure and will allow for easy off-site storage options. The fact that data storage technology changes and become obsolete is another reason for using multiple storage devices. Remember floppy disks or zip drives? Even today it's getting harder to find computers that offer CD or DVD drives. Could these soon be going way of the floppy disk? Who knows? That's why I think it's best to have those files on different media. Well, that brings us to the end of our online study of image capture and output and completes the online study of preparing for PPA certification. I hope that you take the time to really study your book, work through the online practice tests that are available at passthecpp.com, and I hope to hear from you when you pass the CPP and get that designation that you are a certified professional photographer. Thanks for joining me.